Hey everyone, it's me again. My air image is my Facebook stuff, and Farm Dad Ward Barf is YouTube. And I finally had something worthwhile, or at least I could find the time to go shoot. It's been a busy summer. Now I thought about trying to find this shot I wanted to intro with. And I thought, well, this one looks nice. Kind of has this interstellar theme to it. I thought, well, I'll throw in a little interstellar soundtrack. But I don't want to risk getting a copyright claim. And then I thought, oh, this one looks like it's from Dallas, that show. Yeah, there's that dumb thing. I never watched it for whatever reason, though. I know what the theme song is.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
But yeah, I don't have time to do all the editing and the swipes to make recreate that intro song. Plus, using these musics, I don't want to risk copyright claim because it might demonetize the video, and I kind of want this thing to go viral. Because if it goes viral, this is how I'm going to pay for Christmas presents for the boys this year. So let's cross our fingers and like and share the video if you appreciate it. And so I had one more shot like this that I thought was kind of cool. Instead of going from the bottom to the top at nighttime, this was going from left to right. And it's got the LED lights showing up that grain cart. But we'll kind of skip all the frizz or the decorative stuff, and we'll just get right to it. We're looking at a Claas Lexion 780T. I believe T means it's the tracked model of the 780 with a 16-row corn head. I think it's called a Drago or Drago. I base my pronunciation off the Rocky IV movie where he fights Drago, Dolph Lundgren. So Drago Series 2. Okay, starting off, I wanted to get at least a close-up of how this thing is hooked up to the combine. It looks like just a pin with a hitch system. They probably torched off the grain cart's tongue or extended something and added a pin. Then they added some shielding to where the chaff comes out, and you can kind of see where it's been building up there. They added a custom hopper for the combine to dump the corn into the back, and then that hopper will take the corn back to the cart. And there's a drive shaft there that kind of runs back to this motor. Now, if I understood it correctly, this motor was salvaged off an irrigation pivot, and once I pan around a little bit, you'll see a fuel tank between those wheels. And this motor doesn't run the entire time they're in the field. This is controlled by the operator of the combine, where they can turn the motor on and off depending on the demand. So when they need to unload that cart, they can turn on that motor and run the auger to unload the cart into the tractor's grain cart, the one that's pulled up alongside of it. Now that auger you see in the middle of the screen going from the bottom up, that one was added. That's an aftermarket one. That is what brings the corn from the additional hopper back to the middle of the grain cart, and then once it kind of helps it evenly disperse it. Now this next shot, I know this is out of focus, and it's kind of a funny story because everything in this video is shot with the kids in the minivan while I'm trying to fly. And because over the weekends is when my wife does some softball stuff, so I get the boys, and I keep trying to figure out how I can indulge in my hobby a little bit as well as hang out with the boys. And they're not always the most excited. At this point, when I was shooting this one of them was taking a nap, and I was like, I really want to get this shot of this specifically, where the corn is actually getting dumped into the hopper behind the combine and then dispersed into the grain cart behind it. This one I had not shot effectively with this drone that I've had for over a year, and I didn't get an opportunity to do it last year. And I thought, oh, if I'm coming back from Omaha with the boys in the van, one fell asleep, I might be able to pull this off. And at this point, I was kind of rushing these shots because one of the boys had fallen asleep in the nap, or he was taking a nap in the back of the van. And I was like, well, I can maybe get these done before he wakes up. And because he has this thing, when he wakes up, if he sees me first and not his mom, it's full-blown fits. So I was rushing to get these done. And this was another thing I wanted to take a closer look at, was how close this grain cart rides up next to the other one. And I don't know if those are just abrasion marks from it being so close, or how those abrasion marks got that high up on the pipe. But it got me thinking, I wonder if they are able to open up a field with this grain cart riding up alongside of it, with that 16-row corn head, which is 40 feet wide. If they can if they could avoid a couple rows, or maybe they could just lose one or two rows as they open up a field, and they can unload into that back cart once they have a full, once the combine and the grain cart is full, they can dump 1,000 bushels in the back or into that adjacent cart, that 1550. I think it's called like a Bulzer 1550 cart. And what advantage that gives them is they could cut a wide perimeter field without having to stop or back up or try to find a way to unload. Because I don't do any corn harvesting myself. This is based on observation. But from what I can tell is when you first start a field is when you have the most logistical problems, because you really don't have a way to get grain carts up to a combine to let it unload. So like combines will cut a path into a field, then they'll have to back out to unload and then continue cutting again, which is a huge time sink. But with this method, you could cut a perimeter of a field and not have to stop to unload. You just keep unloading into this other grain cart, and he'll fall back behind the combine and follow him to the end of the field. I'll show you some math on that at the end of the video to explain what I'm talking about. But you get the idea that this isn't just for a wow factor. Like when you first see it, you think, oh, that's kind of cool, and then you wonder like, oh, what's the point? But the more you observe it, you're like, it makes a lot of sense. The whole point of this is you could have large or very long fields where the cart is getting full, where this, like the tractor's grain cart might get full, and once he peels away to go unload to fill a semi, you know, you have a 16-row corn head that's picking up a lot of corn every minute, and it doesn't take long for him to fill. And you don't want him to stop in the field to wait for the other grain cart to catch up with him. And this way he just keeps going. Okay, for these last shots, what I wanted to emphasize was the size of some of these fields. Now, there's some applications or some areas where having a grain cart behind the combine is not really necessary. Maybe if you got a small field with that's kind of adjacent to multiple roads, maybe it's not necessary to have a grain cart behind you. But if you have a large field that's either got a very large perimeter or very long stretches in the middle of the field, you can realize that you might get stuck. And it's a field like this where a grain cart that's being towed behind the combine actually has a lot of utility. Now, if he was doing beans, he probably doesn't use it at all. Beans don't have the same yield per acre. If you're a farmer yourself, I'm telling you stuff you already know. But for someone who might have just stumbled across this video that trying to make sense of like the application of this, beans have a lower yield per acre, so you wouldn't need this. Corn has higher yields per acre, so you always have more material coming on faster. And when you have long stretches where you're a long ways away from your grain cart, it doesn't take long for a combine to fill its hopper. And once you fill a hopper, you either have to stop and wait, or you get what they call like cab corn, then starts dumping over the hopper and ends up on the cab. Okay, now before I go on to the math and lose all my audience, I'm going to do a quick pitch on two projects that I'm trying to work on. And these are going to be Patreon supported projects. And one of them is kind of a hobby where I'll put stuff, but just not as much stuff depending on support. So My Air Nebraska is a project where I'm posting aerial photos and videos and content of and around Nebraska. One of them is going to be these 360 images of small towns. As I go around, I'll shoot small towns and be able to post the photos as well. Patreon supporters will be able to get their small towns featured on the website, as well as have access to photos of those towns or photos around Nebraska where they can have a copyright-free photo, where they can go print it at a store or use it on their website or do whatever they want with it. Once it's a Patreon photo, it is yours to use, and I appreciate the support. And there will be other content up there as well. But primarily the gist is I get support, and then I give content to the supporters. So that's My Air Nebraska. The other project, and this one's a little sillier, I'll admit, but it's to satiate some curiosity. How are superheroes made? This is in the same vein as Super Size Me or Icarus or Bigger, Faster, Stronger, where people explore like body transformation. Now, the goal is to consult with a bunch of professionals, trainers, doctors, and other medical practitioners, and assess how do you transform a body from one fat percentage or body mass, whatever, muscle mass, and turn it into this superhero body within like 4 or 5 months. Like you see these guys, these actors take on these roles and transform themselves, and you're like, how do they do that? Like, how are they able to transform themselves that fast? Well, what I want to do is document the process. So I need to consult with the professionals, create the process, and then document it from beginning to end. And the idea is so we know every dollar, every minute, every calorie that's used to create that superhero physique. Now, the fun in this is both the conflict and the curiosity. Like, we're all a little curious about how it's done, but there's also an immense amount of conflict and discomfort that goes with it. And I want to explore those questions. And in return for support, all the workouts, all the equipment, all the nutrition, all the information I get goes on the website, as well as videos go up on the YouTube channel. Now, both these projects, superherosizeme.com as well as My Air Nebraska, both these projects will not start until they hit a minimum goal on the fundraising level. So if I have 5 supporters on one or 10 supporters on the other, neither one of those will be able to actually contribute to the Patreon until I hit my bare minimum. Once I hit the bare minimum, then I will receive support and start creating content within that project. So those are the 2 projects. Appreciate the time. All right, now back to this. The exciting part you're all waiting for, the math. There's a little bit of sarcasm in that. Before I get too much into this math, I want to show you this field. Using Google Earth, you can draw a perimeter around a field, and you can get a sense of the perimeter length as well as the area. So you got 1.84 miles, or in other words, 131 acres within this space here. Now, if you go over to the math of this, we have a Claas Lexion 780T, the tracked version, with a 16-row head and 40-foot head, or it's 16 rows or 40-foot wide, Drago Series 2, Drago Series. I don't know. Again, like I said, I use the pronunciation I know from Rocky 4. So, Drago. Drago fought Rocky. So we're going to call it a Drago. Or Drago would be dumb. If they call it a Drago, I'm going to be upset. So, Drago, Series 2. 200 bushels per acre. I'm going to break this down into time and then distance and space. So, if the claim is it can do 5,000 bushels per hour, that's nonstop. That's not cutting into a field a little bit, backing out, trying to unload, then going again, and then trying to, navigate where the grain carts can get to the combine, cutting perimeters or cutting lines down the middle. This is running nonstop. At 5,000 bushels an hour, you're looking at 83.3 bushels per minute. 5,000 divided by 200 gets you 25 acres per hour. Now, at 83.3 bushels per minute, that is 385 bushels goes into a 780 combine. That's the combine's capacity. So in 4 minutes and 36 seconds, the combine's going to be full. Now, if you extend it with a 700 bushel cart that's towed behind the combine, the 700 bushels will fill in 8 minutes and 24 seconds. You put those two together, it takes 13 minutes at 83.3 bushels per minute to fill both the combine and the cart that it's being towed. And within that 13 minutes, you'll have about a semi-load. A semi-load is going to be 900 to 1,000 bushels. So in 13 minutes, you'll have a full semi-load. Now, if we break this down into distance and space, an acre is about 43,560 square foot per acre. With a 40-foot head, you can go 1,089 feet, and you're going to have 200 bushels. So it almost breaks down to, for every tenth of a mile with a 40-foot head, you're going to have 100 bushels. So at a half mile, you got 500 bushels. And now, this combine, the 780T, is going to be full at 385 bushels. So you can't get more than a half mile. You can get less than a half mile before your combine is full. Now imagine if you're cutting into this field, maybe this is fine. This is going alongside the road, and this is fine. You can, that's not a big logistical problem. You can cut this part of the field and then offload onto the road. But if this field was in the middle of a section and you have to go around the whole thing, a half mile is not going to be enough on a field that's 1.84 miles. So let's go back to this. Now, if you have the 780T that's full at 385, at 3/4 of a mile, you're going to be 365 bushels over the combine's capacity. At 1 mile, you're going to be 615 bushels over the combine's capacity. But there's a 700 bushel grain cart that's being towed. So at 615 over full, and you got a 700 bushel cart, you still have 85 bushels left. So 700 bushel capacity here is more than, so you have 85 bushels left after you get to 1,000 bushels, a full mile around. And the field's 1.8 miles. And you're going to have 1,800 bushels to pick up going around this whole field. You got 1,800 bushels all around. Now, back in that video, you noticed that grain cart pulled by the tractor can get real close behind the combine and possibly receive corn from the combine's rear grain cart. Now, if it can do that, and you can get 1,000 bushels onto the combine, as well as 1,500 bushels into the grain cart, you could potentially go 2,500 bushels. You know, fully loaded combine, fully loaded grain cart. You can go roughly 2,500 bushels, almost 2.5 miles in perimeter before you have to unload both the combine's grain cart, as well as the grain cart towed by the quad track tractor. So you've extended your capacity immensely, and you don't have to stop for anything. You just keep going. You can cut open fields uninhibited. So that is the advantage. That's the whole point of having this grain cart behind it. It's not just because it looks really cool. It does. But you've extended your capacity. There's other guys that would cut maybe a 1/4 mile into a field, and they have to back a combine up all the way to the road to unload the combine, and then they can start again. Well, you've ate up a couple minutes there, and you got hours and hours and hours and hours to go. So you're buying your time back with this. And you're buying your time back without actually having to have additional labor on hand. All you need is more truck drivers. You don't need tractor drivers. You don't need another tractor hooked up to another grain cart. All you got to do is hook it up to a combine. So that's the advantage. Less labor, less equipment, and just more productivity. So there you go. Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe if you'd like to know when something like this gets posted again, or see when I post some aerial photos and videos content. And have a good one.